Hello everybody, welcome back. So today, as you can probably guess by the ingot that's in my hand, we're going to talk about casting. I'm just going to kind of arbitrarily throw these into 4 different categories. So first off, there's sand casting, which is usually done with like Petrobond or something. Pretty much a special kind of sand that likes to stick together. And then there's what I like to call mold casting. It's a little bit more permanent. Sometimes it isn't, but sometimes it is. That's generally going to be with some sort of cement, some sort of plaster of some sort. And depending on the usage of it, it could be more permanent or it could be less permanent. Then there is the one that I like to do, which is ingot form casting. Usually ingot forms are made out of graphite or steel. I prefer graphite, just saying, because carbon has a much higher temperature of not being solid anymore. And there is also shot casting. And I'm sure there are other forms of casting out there, but this is the main form I'm going to cover. And shot casting is pretty much you're dumping liquid metal into water at a pretty slow rate. So you're pretty much coming out with little beads and pellets and such. And of course, there are other kinds of casting out there. Not going to discount those, but these are the 4 that you're probably going to run into the most. Now, they do some other weird stuff at steel foundries and such, but we don't really do that here. With sand casting and mold casting, generally speaking, you're going to want to put in some sort of ventilation. Unless you're like casting a rod, at which point the mold is ventilation. You might as well just create some sort of ingot form for it anyway. But you're going to want to get some sort of ventilation because as the metal goes into something, it's going to want to push up. And some of that air might get trapped and it may not fill in all the way. So if there are parts that stick out a little bit, you're going to just, a couple of vents, a couple air vents. Nothing spectacular, nothing huge. But, enough to get the air out so the metal can come in. So for ingot form casting, there is something you guys need to know. And I mean, this is true for really all of these, except for shot casting, because it's literally like the exact opposite. You're gonna want to preheat your mold. For sand casting, I'm not sure if it's as important, but mold casting, you might want to make sure that nothing's getting in there. Ingot form casting, you're definitely going to want to do it. I try and preheat my mold every time, although sometimes I've been unsuccessful. Fortunately, the dry climate that I live in lends itself to good ingot form casting, even if I forget to preheat. Usually the reasons why you want to preheat are because, you don't want your metal to come flying out of the mold when there is a liquid to gas transformation happening at the bottom of it, and it just blows up. That happens. When a liquid turns into a gas, it expands rapidly, and so it makes everything else around it move out, including your molten metal. And you don't want to get splashed with that. I've actually been splashed with zinc before. Very small quantity, and fortunately I don't think any of it actually got on my skin, but it did leave a nice stripe across my shirt. I don't know if I still have that shirt or not. As a matter of fact, I do, and there are all the spots where the zinc ended up. I am actually really surprised I still have this shirt. It's been probably at least a year or 2 since that happened. Also to prevent pitting at the bottom, this one there's only a little bit. I think I might have preheated this one, I'm not sure. Actually kind of hard to tell. But there are also others I didn't preheat. For instance, this here is a bit of magnesium bronze that I stupidly did not record, but this is some of my magnesium bronze, and I forgot to preheat the mold beforehand. I only had a little, so don't worry, this isn't, as a result of exploding metal or anything. But as you guys can see, there's a lot of pitting, a lot of patterns at the bottom of this, and that blue tape is just to tell me what's all in it. Preheating, pretty important. You don't want an ingot to come out looking like that, although that's a beautiful color. It's not a beautiful shape. So just be aware of that, whenever you're casting something. Just make sure your ingot mold or whatever you're pouring into is of a good heat to where there's not going to be any sort of liquid or vapors coming up through there that are going to, ruin your whole day. If you're using an ingot form, specifically a graphite one, do not cool it off with water while it's still in the ingot mold. Once you take it out, I mean, go ahead, go for it if you'd really like to. Unless it's like sodium or any other alkaline metal. As far as mold casting though, sometimes people like to use non-permanent molds, usually some sort of calcium oxide sort of deal, real basic plaster. Pour it into that, and how they get it out is they throw it into water. And there's no problem with that actually. That's actually a pretty valid way of doing it. As long as you don't want your mold to be, you know, permanent, that's probably the best way of actually doing it, because the water cooling it down so quick is just pretty much going to make it burst apart. And as far as shot goes, well, pretty much as long as you wait till it's cooled down, which should be pretty quick. I mean, it's a bunch of little pieces of metal. You should be fine, but as long as it's cooled off, you should be fine. But yeah, pretty much you want to keep your stuff looking nice, polished, pretty, shiny, and fairly even too. So also be cognizant of casting on a slope. I've had a few issues with that too. If you're going to cast on a slope, make sure you have your ingot mold supported to sort of counter that slope, because gravity can be a bit of an issue. Well, I hope you all have been informed by this video, that you all enjoyed this video. Certainly, I enjoyed making it. And, yeah, I mean, if you guys intend on setting out on your own and doing something like this, I would suggest getting into a little bit more advanced research on the stuff. You know, make sure you know what you're doing. I do not want to be responsible for any incidents. So, just to let you all know, I don't claim to be an expert, and I don't claim to be giving any advice here. Do your own research. Yeah, and there's always that whole don't try this at home thing that I always like to say. I probably never actually say. But anyway, yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, I hope you go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, comment, you know, support the channel, help the algorithm out a little bit. But yeah, pretty much with that, all I gotta say is thank you guys for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.